So we are recording, yeah. Okay. So let's continue with where we were. So last time you've seen towards the end Robbe-Grillet, and Robbe-Grillet, if you remember, he has the thing with presence. What is the thing with presence? Is really how can I see things in their pure presence, and not anymore how I am usually used to see them. I explain. If you see something, you are usually so carried by your habits, your preconceptions, your everyday life, that you don't really see them. For example, if you look at a phone or at a bottle or at water or at a glass of beer, you don't really see these things, but you're always, in a way, carried away by your perceptual and intellectual habits, which makes you just see the thing as you use it. And Gabriel says that this way of interpreting or of looking at things is itself actually implemented by history. What does it mean? What he's saying must be very palpable. What he's saying is that when you look at a phone, and for you it's a phone, well, it's simply because you are born in a specific historical era. You know what phones are. You know how to use a phone, and this is why when you look at a phone, well, you just see it as a phone. And Heidegger said, if you remember last time, it's only when the phone breaks in your hands that you might start looking at it as a thing, and more or less as a strange thing. So you see what Robbe-Grillet is saying, and you need to understand that Robbe-Grillet, but also Michel Foucault, Deleuze, Derrida, and many other French intellectuals who were already becoming to produce in the 50s, beginning of the 60s, but already in the 50s, they were quite influenced by Heidegger. And one of the mottos of Heidegger is the withdrawal of being, and the withdrawal of the withdrawal. Now, what does it mean? It means that for Heidegger, as early as the Platonic idea, with the Platonic idea, says Heidegger, our relation to the sensitive, to pure being, he doesn't think that the sensitive is itself being, but to make it simple, our relation to the things as they are manifested to us withdraws. We start to look at things from the way we understand them, rather from their pure eclosion, as he says, l'éclosion de l'être, the way beings purely manifest themselves to us. For Heidegger, the withdrawal of this power of manifestation of all beings, this withdrawal begins with Plato when he interprets the being of beings as what we understand as idea. So I explain, it's not that complicated. When you look at something, and instead of seeing it in its power of appearing, and you think, it's a phone, well, you apply what you understand on what you see, and this is when Robbe-Grillet says, this is when you're unable to see anymore, because instead of seeing the thing, you start seeing the idea of the thing manifested in the visible appearance of the thing. So in the 50s, Hans Robbe-Grillet, through Heidegger and many other thinkers and philosophers, they want to bring back this kind of pure manifestedness of things. Now, the solution of Robbe-Grillet is, as you have seen, his descriptive techniques or his narrative techniques that he connects to other people, also like Brecht, not like Brecht, like Beckett, and the writer Raymond Roussel. And for him, Raymond Roussel, Robbe-Grillet, Beckett, and many others for example, the philosophers you have cited, all of these people, well, they're trying to really like access things again. This is why Robbe-Grillet considers that there's a plot of history. There's a complot, there's a kind of, it's a kind of, one of these theories where you feel that it's a bit of a kind of a paranoid theory, but I think it's really well grounded, where we really think that there's a plot of history, where the fact that we relate to things in this kind of historical way, in the practical way, in the way where we see things as dominated by ideas, this is what makes the world withdraws. And you see here Nietzsche, before Heidegger, interpreted the event of metaphysics and the things we're talking about, the metaphysical, the beyond of the physical, with Plato too. For him, this is a decline of the strong Greek thought. Plato is the beginning of corruption, of decline, because Plato interpreted the being of beings as idea. And of course, the idea, you don't see it. If you remember the story of the cube, the idea is beyond, the idea is given to you via your intellect, the senses are less than what the intellect gives you access to, and this world of the intelligible is superior to the world of the visible, and hence you have the superiority of the thinking man over the sensuous man, and you have a superiority of the intellect over the senses, and all of these things which we are more or less accustomed with. And all of that for Nietzsche begins with Socrates and Plato, because their will is to devaluate things, the things of this world, in the name of another world. Now, Plato, it was still more or less, it was still innocent in a way, because for him, the world is still a beautiful thing, a beautiful manifestation of the intelligible, but things then become really worse with St. Paul and Christianity, where this world is interpreted not only as a copy of the idea, but as the place of sin and the fall. And for Nietzsche and Heidegger, history is really the unfolding, the process in which we devaluated the world, in which we thought that a superior world, paradise, God, the realm of the ideas, you can call it whatever you want, something superior, something which is not from this world, is what actually dictates the law to this world, and this world is either a copy, more or less a bad copy or a good copy of this beyond. This is if you are a Greek, and it is the place of the fall and of sin and of corruption if you are a Judeo-Christian Muslim kind of character, and hence the word is devalued. So I hope now you assess the diagram of Robbe-Grillet. Robbe-Grillet says, until today, the novel and literary production was caught into this way of thinking, into this metaphysical way of thinking, and actually in the novel, the metaphysical way of thinking is revealed or is expressed or is made palpable in the use of metaphors and imageries, such as the mountain is standing like a, like a great man, or the sun is a god, or all of these metaphors that you find in the place. And for me, this shows you a kind of community, a kind of relation between man and nature, which is grounded on God and the metaphysical, because he's the creator of both, and he's the one establishing the relation between both. So to bypass that, to bring back things to their pure beingness, The strategy of Robbe-Grillet was to destroy all forms of narratives which can accumulate into a chronological history, and all forms of metaphors that can relate man and nature into this kind of anthropomorphic way. So for him, pure description and destructive narratives was the solution to bring back beings to its innocence or to its brutal way of being. So nature is not humane, it's not meaningful, nor the events accumulate into a history. You have to be able to endure the pure presence and the pure present of things. Now you can see that with this new philosophy, the Nietzschean philosophy is really against Plato. Plato's philosophy, you can say, is from Plato to Hegel. And Hegel, as you know, he's the last great Platonic philosopher, the philosopher of the idea as spirit in this case. And for Hegel, history is divine. There are texts on Hegel here which are very nice and interesting, where he shows you that Jesus shows you that history, the historical course, is actually the course of the manifestation of the Spirit, in which humanity will become God, and Jesus was an announcement of that, of the man God. And the historical process is the process through which humanity will become, in a way, divine. So whatever is the case here, I'm putting the stress on the word history. Because as you can see, history, which is the process of the devaluation of being as it is, chronological time, seeing things as corresponding to the concept. Here, if you read Hegel, it's very clear. Each epoch corresponds to a degree of understanding until you reach absolute understanding, which is Hegel himself and the advent of rational democracy. This way of seeing things, Robbe-Grillet and Nietzsche and the followers of Nietzsche say being was repressed. And what is being and the world? They are life. So you have life against history. This is where we are in the post-war, in the post-50s, in the 50s. There's this kind of acute awareness, especially after World War I and World War II, that all of these historical manias, historical deliriums, well, they lead to a total massacre of life. And as you know, up till today, the devaluation of the world, the fact to see the world as a simple copy or something which is not that important, the fact to see life as something that you can dispose with in the name of history, the ideas, the nation, all of these values that come from the Judeo-Christian Islamic world, plus Plato, if you want to add that layer. All of these ideas, which are values to which the sensitive must subject, devaluate life and lead to the last nuclear apocalypse. In the nuclear apocalypse, you justify the killing of thousands of just like that, just in the name of history and in the name of rationality and in the name of progress, etc. So what I'm trying to tell you is this. This is the diagnosis that Robbe-Grillet and many others in the 50s are doing in the atmosphere of, the bomb and the possible nuclear war to come, and in the aftermath of the Nazi disaster. The diagnosis is that, well, you see what, all of these ideas about the superiority of the idea, history, values, morality, is actually a kind of suicidal plan that is going to eradicate life. And hence, we need to react to that. We need to stop this kind of machine that is going to exterminate life, because its will to power is nihilistic. Now, what is the will to power? It's a Nietzschean notion. The will to power is really something, do you affirm life or are you against life? It's as simple as that. It doesn't need to be more complicated than that. So you as a person, do you think that there is something more important than life as you live it here and now? Or do you think that, well, you know what, this life is simply a test? the afterlife is more important, or the discovery of the intelligible is more important. Well, if you think that there's something more important than life, Nietzsche says that you are a sick, meaning what kind of life posits something beyond life? This is the Nietzschean question. You see, it's a question which is not anymore a question of knowledge. So I repeat, if you look at someone like Jesus, or if not Jesus, because Nietzsche thinks that Jesus is a kind of hippie, he's a nice guy, he's just a guy who wants to die in peace. If you look at someone like St. Paul says that, you know what, we are sinners, we fell down. This word is a word which is absolutely disgusting, almost. Everything in it, be it the sensuous, the pleasures, the sensations, is something which is really like not good. And you need to behave yourself, you need to repress yourself in order to reach the other world in good shape. So Nietzsche says, yeah, okay, fine. For Nietzsche, the problem is not, is there really a paradise or hell or not? The problem for Nietzsche is what kind of life, what kind of living person thinks that there's something more important than life. For Nietzsche, the answer is obvious. It's simply when you are a sick life, a tired life, a life that cannot anymore enjoy, create, deal with the world, this life would like to run away from the world to find rest, or simply to take vengeance from the world. So you can see now this kind of twist. What Nietzsche is saying is, we don't really care to know if the world of the intelligibles is real or not. We don't really care if Jesus is really the prophet or the Messiah who understood that history is divine, as Hegel says. What we care about is this evaluation, is to know who depreciates life and who appreciates life. This is the polarity. Either you affirm or you deny life. And for Nietzsche, history is simply the process or the name of the unfolding of nihilism, meaning the depreciation of life. Fine. So I think here you see we change philosophy. Before we were with Plato in the classical image. Plato was really like the key thinker. Plato, people like Hegel, Neoplatonism, you know, you have many people who follow Plato. And now we have something other. We have Nietzsche, and with his thought of the affirmation of life as it is, the requirement to reach back the things as they are without interpreting them historically, without jumping above them, to be able to see again, to be able to appreciate the world as it is again, and not to subject it to things which are beyond the world. With that, you have seen then Robrier and his take on the presence. We need to be able to reach back to presence. Fine. And we've seen that so far, that the well-organized, harmonious world of the classics, meaning Plato and what we have seen with the classical image, the modern image, is usually disrupted with the powers of time. What does it mean? It means that if you are a Platonic kind of movie maker, thinker, artist, you are, let's say, Eisenstein, and you can be great and Platonic in the same time, like Eisenstein. You see, if you remember, we said that Eisenstein needs to understand the revolution and then needs to do his kind of conceptual articulation of the revolution. And this is when he subjects the images and the sensations to the order of the concept. And this is how he's able to express in the visible the idea of the revolution. And you can see that in the classical organization, the concept is key, understanding is superior to the senses, and the images are going to represent the concept. And when you see images, you see them in order to go towards the concept, in order to understand what the revolution is in this case. But we have seen that this kind of harmonious sensory motor coordination of the body with thought, because of course when you understand what is the revolution, you know how to deal with the anti-revolutionaries. For example, you know who are your enemies. If you see a bourgeois, you get angry, you beat him. You know what you have to do, and you act in accordance to the goal, knowing that the goal is to realize the communist state or the American dream or whatever rational goal you have. And all of these goals are, of course, eschatological, meaning they point towards a kind of accomplishment of history. So all your actions are organized rationally to realize morality and happiness on the earth, which is, if you want, the rational take on things. It remains that, as we have seen, it remains that, well, sometimes you want the good, you are aiming at the good, and yet, as St. Paul used to say, well, you do the bad. You do something bad, you do something evil, even though all what you want is to do the good, you commit sin over sin, or you deviate from your rational good trajectory. And we have seen so far the powers, and this time these are the powers of time, and the powers of time are going to disrupt. They are going to bring distortions into this kind of linear path of history. And we have seen the physical power of time. We have seen, if you remember, the circuits of time. And in the circuit of time, you have three powers. You have, for example, destinal point. An event happens which is so intense that you can't anymore function normally. You can't anymore just be a good guy, like getting a job, getting married, and participating into this kind of rational historical path. We have seen that sometimes things bifurcate in time. A little incident becomes monstrous with time, like you see your, I don't know, your girlfriend eating or speaking in a certain way, and all of a sudden this becomes a disaster with time, or vice versa. We have seen the crystal where you are blocked in time, etc. We have seen oniric powers, the power of memory, where memory really starts to play tricks on you. The oniric power where you are really carried by the transformation of the images into one another via an anamorphic kind of thing. And all of these are really the powers of time. The last one we have seen is the power of pure presence, which was covered with Robbe-Grillet, the whole of the presence, where you really start looking at things as if you are surrounded by this very, very, how can I say, very mute world that doesn't really care about you. And this was the last one we have seen, when you see the world as not anymore as the playground for your actions, but you see it in its full strangeness. Now, today we are going to start a new series, but it's the same kind of idea, which is under the sign of the eternal return. The eternal return, which is, of course, a Nietzschean notion. And this is why I began to speak about Nietzsche. So the eternal return. And you see, the eternal return also has three dimensions. You have the order of time. You have then the theory of time, or what you call the symbol theory of time. And last, you have the seriality of time. So anyway, we're going to see them all during the next sessions. But first, one or two words on the eternal return. Now, you know the eternal return, to make it just simple and short. Nietzsche says at one point that all the names of history are I. Me, I am all the names of history. What does it mean? There are many interpretations of that. The interpretation I take from Deleuze is that actually everything which really happens and which is going to impact history is the name of Nietzsche, because nothing historical happens unless you break history in half, which is a nice paradox. Why is it a paradox? It's a paradox because, as you know, history usually, with its ordered, necessary chronological time, doesn't allow anything great to appear. You know that. If you think that you are historically determined, let's suppose you are a Maronite from, I don't know, from Kisserwan, you were born in 1980, your father was a guy. If you accumulate all this data, well, you can never be something other than, you know, a Maronite from Kazirwan who most probably is going to work again in the shop of his father, and you are in a way stuck in this determinism. So how can something really historically happen? How can you have something like even Plato himself, or Jesus, or Napoleon, or Einstein, or Eisenstein, or Nietzsche himself, or any one of these great names of history that Nietzsche claims to be all the names of history? How greatness in the sense, how the event in the strong sense is possible, cannot be thought by history, which is quite interesting. Meaning all the historical figures, all of them for Nietzsche, from the most despicable one to the greatest one, are all actually in a way Nietzschean, in a very specific way, because all of them somewhere believe that history can be broken into the middle, into a half. And this is what Nietzsche calls the order of time. What is the order of time? The order of time is simply when you look at things and you're convinced a priori, without any further ado or proof, that things could be different. This is the power of the order of time, meaning you are convinced that things can be rearranged differently. If you take Einstein, which is more or less Platonician because he believes in laws, etc., but it remains that Einstein, to create his new system of physics, well, he had to think that things could be rearranged differently from Newton. The same goes for Picasso, you know, for all the guys that you like, for all these stars and immortals. Why are they immortals? Because they were able to break history in half and reach to something much more vital, from which they were able to reinterpret the world and create either new laws like the classics, or something which is against the law like the postmoderns. But both of them, they break the history in half, meaning they go beneath the historical strata. Now, what does it mean? Here you have to really live that. Even you, when you do a movie or when you do a painting, or when you try to create, you cannot think, well, you know what, I'm just this person, I'm no one, you know, how can I do anything? Anyway, everyone has done already everything. So when you think like that, you can't really create anything. To be able to start creating, you have to cut yourself. You have to cut yourself from your historical determination. You should forget who you are. You should cut yourself from everything which is already established. And hence you should connect to things which are purely vital, Nietzsche says, like pure sensations, pure forces. It is only when you connect to these powers that you will be able to create something new, and then you will make history anew. And of course, you will have followers after that will historicize you by turning you into the leader of a school or the leader of a religion. But the action, the great action, would have been done. So I hope now you see where we are. We're not anymore in a purely physical time. The purely physical determination of time was the circus of time and the whole of time, meaning the whole of the, not the whole of time, the whole of the past and the whole of the present. Because when you will read Deleuze, as I hope you will one day, Deleuze calls the whole of time what we're doing now, meaning the symbol of time. So the whole of time is the symbol of time. We'll see why it's called the symbol of time very soon. So in the eternal return, you have the first moment, which is the order of time. It is when you cut, when you break. It is when you dissociate yourself. And we have seen a first figure of that with the optical sonorous image, when things as colors, as sounds, they detach from the things that they are supposed to be. So I repeat, you see, after a war, which is for Nietzsche, the only purpose and destination of history is war, and it's not paradise. Actually, it's hell and not paradise. So after a war, what happens is that what comes back to being is the pure sensations, pure sounds, as we have seen with Rossellini, with Jerry Lewis, and all the optic sonorous artists, where you start looking at things, when you see red, it's just, and it's not anymore the red of the flower or the red of the car. When things are destroyed, you start seeing shapes and colors, and you start hearing sounds which are purely detached, the pure atoms of colors and sounds. And when you are in contact with that, you can then see something new. You can see something new if you are Rossellini, when you look at people again, and not at people as representing nationhood or representing jobs or representing, I don't know, a social role. When you when you're able to look again at the world, you're able to see visions, and the visions are new. They are the freshness of the world. Now, there is a theory why the world is always new. The world is always new. You only need to know that. Because the world is will to power. What does it mean? Because the world is actually the expression of the affirmation of life, and the affirmation of life is to be always go beyond yourself and to exceed yourself. This is why the world is always new. It cannot stop. Why it cannot stop? Again, because the will to power is what? What is life? When you think what is life? Life is this never-ending cycle of desiring, realizing your desire, and then desiring to desire again. You love, you fall in love, you make love, and then you would love to be in love again, or else it's a disaster. It's the end of your love story if you can't love again. And Nietzsche analyzed the being of beings, not as being the idea, but as being will to power, i.e. life in this very specific way of understanding life, meaning this never-ending going beyond of yourself, realizing what you went towards, and then wishing to go beyond again, and so on and so forth. And this is the core of reality. Now, if the core of reality is that, of course, the real is always new. The real is always new, and actually, we only see it as old because we are formatted with our historical glasses. And this is why we don't see the world as ever new. Now, actually, now the world is ever new. If you're able to look at your screen or at whatever is lying next to you and see it as absolutely new, well, you would be going onto the Nietzschean past, because when Nietzsche is saying no two moments are the same, and in that he is Heraclitean, meaning you never went into the same river twice, meaning the world is ever changing and ever new. So what makes it unnew? What makes it unnew is actually the historical interpretation of the world, meaning when you start to think things as belonging to social categories, to norms, to moral values, and this is when the world, where you get distracted from the world, and you become only preoccupied with these values, ideas, projects, and this is when the word seems to you simply a repetition of the idea, and it starts to appear as old. It starts to appear as, repetitive, and everything is the same. So I hope now you see where's the battle. The battle is a battle of life against history. Now you're getting why you have Nietzsche against Plato, you have life against history. And what does history do to life? It represses life. It makes life look old and dull and boring, while life is going to insurrect against that in order to show that there's always a possibility to break history, to break this kind of laws and regulation which subject you to be only that. You're only a Muslim, only a Christian, only a student, only, I don't know, a movie maker, whatever you are, you have this role and you have to stick to it. And life always insurrects against that because it's a never-ending going beyond yourself. It's a never-ending going beyond yourself, so it's a never-ending becoming. Fine. So this is a war between life and history, and the eternal return is the name of that war. The eternal return simply means to break from history, you need to cut it in half, and when you break from history, how does the world appear to you? First, it appears to you as atoms of colors and sounds. This is when you can, if you want, connect them into the circuit of time, and you start seeing things that disrupt the historical organization, or you can start having visions, which also disrupt the historical organization, or you can break the meaning of things. So the order of time breaks two things. You can either break and tear apart colors and sensations, and you start seeing things. This is optical sonorous. Or you can tear the meaning of things from the meaning of the words. I explain. For example, if you watch a Godard movie, Godard, if you have Eisenstein on the other polarity, you have Godard. Eisenstein, Godard, a Platonic kind of movie maker and a Nietzschean movie maker. So if you take Godard, if you take a movie on war, again, by now Eisenstein, I hope it's clear, you understand the war, etc., because Eisenstein, he knows what is the war. Eisenstein knows what is the war, and he builds his movie in accordance to his knowledge. What does Godard do? Godard says war, question mark. What is war? I don't know what is war. And you see how he's breaking the relation of words to meaning. He's saying, I don't know what is war. Instead of saying, I know what is war and I proceed, and if I don't know, I have to acquire the knowledge before I proceed, Godard says, war, we don't know. What is war? War is a problematic concept. We don't know what is war. And actually, we need to see. What does it mean that war, question mark, what is war? Maybe war is to have airplanes. Maybe war is, I don't know, to rape people. Maybe war is to loot. You go and you steal from houses. Maybe war is boredom. Maybe war is visiting places. Maybe war is to be part of the marching soldiers. Maybe war is to have tanks, etc., etc. And this is, if you watch a Godard movie, I'm here referring to Le Petit Soldat. In Le Petit Soldat, you have these cartons, these kind of, you know, he shows you a kind of a black carton with written on it the aviation, and then you start seeing airplanes. So I will show you here some of these categories. Well, this is not working, so I'll forget it. I want to share my screen. So I hope you are seeing it. So this is from Les Carabiniers. I hope you see the categories.
On va voir ça. Faites-la partir.
I want to show you the categories proper because some of them
Où
are.
c'est que t'as mis le petit vieux?
Je reviens.
Où c'est que t'as mis le petit vieux? Descendez. Enlevez votre chandail. Un soldat salue un artiste. Bougez pas. Enlevez votre robe. S'il vous plaît.
So this is in the category looting and rape. We didn't see the carton, but I hope you're getting the idea. So you have these so these are the categories, and then you have a series of images that come after the category. Here you're seeing the family of the soldiers. And when you take a Godard movie, this is how it is structured. How it is structured, he usually takes a problem. For example, what is war? And then he starts declining this problem into many problematic points. For example, is war boredom, raping, looting, etc. And each time he puts a category, you have a series of images. So what is a series, or what you call serial art, not seriality, series into the art, is when you have a problematic concept, and given that the concept is problematic, you don't know really what is war, or what is a soldier, or what is the Navy. Because you have this kind of problem, you are going to build a series of how war is present to you, meaning how war is exemplified into many manifestations. So if you take someone like LeWitt, LeWitt is not working. So LeWitt is going to make something. We're going to what we call the incomplete cubes. I don't know if you know this project, but he has a series of incomplete cubes. This is a cube which is incomplete. This is another one. And this is here you have another one. And last you have, not this one, all the possible combinations of incomplete cubes. So you can see that what is serial art? Serial art is when you have a problematic concept, and in relation to this problematic concept, you are going to build a series that is going to approximate the problematic concept. Let's suppose you know what is a cube. You know that a cube is not incomplete, but complete. What can you do? All you can do is try to build the complete cube, meaning the ideal cube. But when your concept is incomplete, is problematic, I don't know what war is, this is when you start building series. And you build a series to show all the different possibilities or ways of being of this incomplete cubes. So, LeWitt was very well known for that. He always have a kind of formula which is incomplete. For example, combine 2 lines and 3 arcs. This is an undefined combination. It's not like the cube has 6 faces. It's combination of 2 lines and 3 arcs. And then he unpacks the theories related to this combination. And this allows you to see variations. And I think this is really what's interesting. What's interesting is that when you depart from the concept, which is well-defined, when you depart from the well-defined concept, instead of having a perfect cube, and this is all what you can do, you start seeing all the possibilities, in this case, all the ways in which a cube could be incomplete. And you can see that this is infinite. An incomplete cube really is an infinite thing because you see all the possibilities and the variations on that. So this is from LeWitt. 2 arcs and I think it's 3 lines and 2 arcs or vice versa.
This is all the combinations of 2 kinds of arcs and 3 kinds of lines. There's the arcs from the corners, arcs from the sides, straight lines, not straight lines, and broken lines. Each of these is drawn from 4 directions. There's the arcs from this corner, this corner, this corner, and this corner. Arcs from the left side, the top side, the right side, and the bottom side. Straight lines that are vertical, horizontal, diagonal to the right, and diagonal to the left. And the same goes for the not straight lines and the broken lines. So that makes a total of 5 different kinds of lines and 4 different kinds of directions. There's 20 different possibilities. Each one of these is done with a combination of another one. So you have 1 and 2, 1 and 3, 1 and 4, 1 and 5, all the way until 1 and 20. Then you start with 2 and 3, 2, 4, 2, 5, 2, 6, and so on, up until 20. And finally, when you get down to the end, you have 19 and 20. That's the last. So all of the possible combinations are done. Now, if you just see, the first one is 1 and 2 would be 1 and 2 would be 2 different arcs from the corners, and they're put together this way. Now, these visually set up into, on the top, all the arcs, and on the bottom, all the straight lines down into the non-straight lines, and finally ending up with the broken lines. So it works visually from top to bottom, as well as from left to right, for each of the rows is unified by 1.
I hope you understood how this opens this kind of possibility of combining and seeing and things in a kind of, you cannot really envision or predict that. So you see, this is for the series. So I hope by now you have more or less a kind of coherent concept of the series. For example, Andy Warhol doesn't make series. Why he doesn't make series? Because it's very simple. He doesn't have a problematic concept. For him, he knows who is Marilyn Monroe, and Andy Warhol is actually not dealing with series. There's a series of prints, but it's not a series in the aesthetical sense. Meaning Andy Warhol, he just works on the cliché. He works on the industrial production of images, on the fact that you can have many of it. And to have many of it doesn't mean that it's a series. A series, I repeat, is a sequence of images that is going to be reflected in a category, meaning in a problematic concept. If you don't have a problematic concept, forget your series. You're not doing art seriel. You're not doing a serial art. You are just doing, you are reproducing your image many times. And I hope here you see how the concept, the aesthetical way of thinking about images allow you to discern between images really, and not from the outside. From the outside you say, yeah, but Andy Warhol also is a series because they are, well, no, it doesn't work like that, because you can have many Brio boxes, you can have many, I don't know, Twix chocolates. It doesn't make them a series, okay? So the series main core is the problematic concept, meaning when you are going to detach the word from the meaning, you are going to put the concept in question, this is when you have a series. Now, of course, Godard, he's a virtuoso of that. He's really like incredible in that. I think he lives like that, Godard. Godard really, even when you talk to him, it's when you hear him in interviews, it's very disturbing because it's as if this guy have no definitions in his mind. He doesn't like function by this is that. He's always like, yeah, but you know, maybe television is like, I don't know, maybe television is like fishing. You know, this is a typically Godardian sentence. You know, what if writing is like welding? You see, you feel that this guy doesn't have really a kind of definition of things as they are defined in the dictionary, meaning as they are defined in history. If you ask Godard, what is writing? He doesn't know. And for him to know, he needs to look at, he needs to see. And this is what makes it interesting, because if you don't know, if you suspend your judgment just for a while, when it comes to what is what, if you just suspend your judgment for, I don't know really what is Beirut, or what is writing, or what is a woman, or what is a man, you know, you have movies like A Woman is a Woman. In Godard, the question is, what is a woman? Is it what you see in magazines, you know, these top models? Is it someone which is completely enamored with her guy? Is it a narcissistic creature? Is it just a woman, what looks like a woman? We don't know. And this is when Godard starts to build series around this notion. If you take another movie, which is Vivre sa vie, the question is, what does it mean to live? And this is when Godard starts to build a series under this main problem, like maybe living is to have a business, is to work. Maybe living is to be in love. So maybe living is to be this or that, or to have a passion. Maybe living is speaking. This is when he builds his series. And what's interesting when you build series is that something starts to happen between the series. I think this is really crucial in Godard. And this is when we move to the symbol of time, or to the whole of time, as Deleuze called it, or to what we call seriality proper. So you have seriality, and you have a series of images, which is not the same. You have a series of images. You have a series of images when you have problematic concept, and images that respond to this problematic concept. And then you have seriality, so when you put two series and you see what happens in between. This is when Godard becomes really, really very interesting. You know, so LeWitt, he just makes series, but he doesn't look at seeing what would happen between the series. Because when you have series, we start wondering what could be this or what could be that. This is when a fulguration happens between the series. This is when something weird happens between the series. And you see that there's a power which goes beyond reason. I explain by showing you a picture. So if you take something like that, you see this is a fox, but it's as if it's fire. So you have now two species, fire and fox. And this is, if you want, a firefox. It's as if nature has this kind of, as if something is passing between the fire and the fox. So I'll show you another one, something that passes in between. I'll try this one. So this is on plants and birds, but maybe I want another one. So if you look at this, you see these birds standing on a tree, and it's as if, you know, you have this kind of, you know, I don't know, it's as if nature is playing metaphoric tricks on you. And this is when you see something passing between. So if you want the canonical example of the passing between, or when you have detached beings like that, you have detached beings, you have birds, which we don't know anymore if they are birds or leaves. What could happen that something passes between birds and between leaves, between fire and fox. And I think this is the interesting side in building theory. So if you want, the canonical examples that Deleuze refers to explain the seriality is the wasp and the orchid. Now, the wasp, as you know, is this thing that looks like a bee, and the orchid is this beautiful flower which is white, you know, orchids. And the orchids, I don't know if you know that, but the orchids, they have a way to build the tip of the orchid. They build the tip of the orchid as if it's the back of a female wasp. So can you imagine it's a flower who is literally building, you know, a kind of sex doll for the wasp to copulate with the orchid, because this is how the wasp is going to be used to reproduce the orchids, because the wasp comes to copulate with this kind of doll, wasp female doll, and when he copulates with the doll, he carries, you know, the pollen, and he goes and he is able to make the orchids reproduce, which is absolutely insane. What is insane when you see the orchid and the tip of the orchid, which is really modeled like the back of a female wasp, is how did the orchid know that? You know, orchids don't have eyes, they are plants, they are flowers, and yet there's a kind of thing in nature, a power of life, that passes through. I hope now you're getting this idea. It's like you put two series, flowers, wasps. They have nothing to do with one another, like fire and foxes. And then something passes in between where the fire becomes a fox and the fox becomes fire. And this reveals that there's something beneath. There's a kind of power that is able to pass across the divisions in species and genera. And this power is, in this case, what is surprising. Okay? So Godard, he makes his movie in the same way. If you want to understand Godard, I think the best way is to read parallel biology, which is the biology between the species, and not anymore the biology of the species, like how the orchid uses the wasp to reproduce, and how you have cats which actually use monkeys to reproduce, and so on and so forth. So you have all kinds of intersections which are absolutely mesmerizing, where you see a kind of transversal thing happening between the individual. So in a way, a wasp is not anymore just a wasp, and an orchid is not anymore just an orchid, because you have this intertwinement of these two species. So Godard does the same, I think. For example, Godard, what he does is, if you take Ici et ailleurs, Ici et ailleurs really is it's a movie by Godard. I hope you will watch it, but for Godard you have to watch. I can't rebuild the movie in speech, because the whole point is to see. So Godard begins his movie by you know, as a classical movie. Like Godard says in Ici et ailleurs, you know what, the PLO, meaning Arafat and his friends, the PLO, and Godard was a very a supporter of the Palestinian cause. So the PLO contacted Godard to make this movie on the Palestinian resistance. And as you know, Godard is a very engaged movie maker. So he accepted, and he came to Lebanon, and he went to Palestine, and he shot a lot of things. And he thought that he's going to do a movie in the classical way, you know, a la Eisenstein. So Godard said, you know, the movie began with the armed struggle, if I remember the order correctly. And then you have another sequence, training. And then you have another sequence, which is the formation of the masses. You see like people reading Marx and stuff like that. And then you have what he called la lutte prolongée, with a long O, the endured struggle, where you see kids, Palestinian kids, training, become soldiers. At last you have victory. So you see how he divides it. He divides it a little bit like Eisenstein, like in a classical way. what is resistance, what is this kind of Palestinian cause and the insurrection against the Israeli colonial forces. Well, it is struggle, formation of the masses, formation of a new generation until victory. And Godard says, okay, this was like that. It was like that, and he really shows you how it was supposed to be, like very kind of ideological, heroic kind of movie. And then what happened is 76 or 73, 76, if I'm getting confused with the dates. Anyways, the Black September, I think it's 76, but anyway, I will review my things. And the massacre of the Palestinians in Jordan in 76, and their defeat also in parts of Israel, Palestine. And this is when Godard says, well, you know what, we didn't see this thing even coming. We're so much blinded by our historical, framework, thinking that, yes, of course, we will prepare ourselves, we will fight, and we will win, that we didn't see that what was coming is the massacre of these people. And when Godard was doing the montage of the movie, he says, everyone in this movie is dead. So what Godard is trying to say in Isiaya is that, you see, history blinds you. Why it blinds you? Because you just see it like these idealized images, and you don't see anymore that maybe in your discourse, in your attitude, in your organization, there's something really, really not going well. And what is not going well is that actually this organization, this kind of heroic historical brainwash, is taking you towards death, which is the opposite of life. And what Godard is saying, he's saying, you see, to think resistance like that is to be blind and is to go towards death. If you want, what he's thinking, Godard. And Godard was one of the greatest Marxist movie maker, which was the one who criticized the communists and the Marxists the most. Why did he criticize the Marxists and the communists of his time the most? And I think we can use this today, especially in Lebanon, a lot. Is because Marxists and communists are utterly blind. They're completely, brainwashed by this becoming of history, heroic action, organization of the masses, winning against capital and the like. And they don't see that this is leading them to utter insensitivity to their condition and to what resistance really means. Because for Godard, resistance, and for any Nietzschean, is never inside history, but resistance is resistance against history. Which I think is very interesting for militant cinema or militant art. What resists? This is the question you might ask yourself if you are interested in doing a movie on the Lebanese revolution or on, militant causes, activism, and the like. One of the questions that Godard really raises in a very, very poignant way in Isiaya is, what does it mean to resist? To resist is never to resist inside history, but always against history. You never resist for the people of 68, the Nietzschean, like Deleuze, Godard, Robbe-Grillet, Foucault, and Duras. If you listen to them, you never resist inside history, because when you're inside history, you're already done with. You're already part of this way of thinking that devaluates life, that is willing to kill himself for the cause or for an ideal, and you are going against life, and practically you are suicidal, you are blind, and you will not succeed. So what Godard is saying is this: what resists is actually life itself. Life itself resists history, because what in history always resists is life. It's never the ideas and the projects which are dictated by the party or by the nation. What resists is your living condition against the repression of history, the fact that we want to put you in a box, the fact that we want you to repeat discourses that you don't really understand. All of this is imposed on you, and when you start to resist, is that your life is not at ease with that. It insurrects against that. And this is what ici et ailleurs puts really like in image. So I'll show you a little bit of that. So if you take ici et ailleurs, I'll show you the loud sound.
Par exemple, plus avoir peur de dire que c'est les choses qui sont compliquées et que c'est l'angoisse qui est simple, trop simple. Ça, par exemple, mettre le son plus fort.
Redonne. Alors êtes-vous disposé à le faire?
Non, pas si fort le son.
Je me contenterai de vous répondre peut-être
Plutôt que c'est toi,
jusqu'à ce que je me fasse une opinion.
Oui, c'est moi. Quand j'en ai marre, j'aime que ça gueule.
Allez, prenez-la, monsieur Cannon, ne la laissez pas au bord de la route. Ouais, c'est le genre de proie qu'il affectionne.
Écoute, c'est tout n'est pas de ma faute si je trouve pas de travail.
Malheureuses pauvres filles qui ne savent pas où aller.
Tu dois aller un peu moins souvent à tes réunions politiques. Tu aurais peut-être le temps d'en trouver. Salut,
C'est vraiment n'importe quoi.
Lise,
toi aussi, le son moins fort.
Oh, ça va, hein?
Mettre le son plus fort. En réalité, comment ça se passe? Des fois, comme ça. Et des fois aussi, comme ça.
Avec le TO323 Octalix. Le TO323 Octalix restitue intégralement et dans toute leur pureté les graves et les aigus.
Ou comme ça.
Le premier, le 612, Vierge folle. Le deuxième, le 609, Bonne Monnaie. Et le troisième, le 617, Adélie.
fait une fugue qui vous dit
Bon,
qu'on va recommencer.
on décompose un de ces mouvements.
Mais je voudrais en être sûr.
Et on regarde lentement.
Excusez-moi, mais
Voilà,
voilà
c'est
ce que
ma
je
faute si
propose.
je trouve pas de travail.
Est-ce qu'on peut y aller comme ça? Oui,
Tu allais un peu
parfait,
moins
parfait.
souvent à tes
Vous pouvez
réunions.
tirer.
On voit qu'il n'y a pas un seul mouvement, mais deux mouvements.
Vraisemblable, un exemple.
Il y a deux mouvements de bruit qui bougent l'un par rapport à l'autre.
J'ai fait tout ce qu'il était possible de faire.
Et dans les moments de manque d'imagination
La police n'a pas enquêté
et de panique,
une seconde sur Rodon.
il y en a toujours un qui prend le pouvoir. Par exemple, ici, il y avait d'abord le bruit de l'école et le bruit de la famille.
Êtes-vous disposé à le faire?
Assieds-toi.
Répondez, monsieur Cannon, est-ce oui ou est-ce non?
Ensuite, il y aura donc le bruit pour effacer le bruit de la famille et celui de l'école.
Prenez-la. Allez, prenez-la, monsieur Cannon, ne la laissez pas au bord de la route.
Toujours un moment, un point dans le temps, où un son prend le pouvoir sur les autres.
How you're getting that here the sound is really what pertains to the concept, as you will see in the next sequence. I hope you saw here how he's building his series. What does it mean to raise the sound? And you start reflecting, what does it mean when you raise the sound? And this builds a series from a problematic point. And where is it going? It's going towards raising the sound as a way to make you numb and blind and just you don't anymore see what is around. And this is where in the movie it appears.
On a fait comme pas mal de gens. On a pris des images. Et on a mis le son trop fort. Avec n'importe quelle image. Vietnam. Toujours le même son. Toujours trop fort. Prague. Montevideo. Mai 68, France. Italie. Révolution culturelle chinoise. Grève en Pologne. Torture en Espagne. Irlande, Portugal, Chili, Palestine. Le son tellement fort qu'il a fini par noyer la voix qu'il voulait faire sortir de l'image. Dans les ruines de la ville de Caramelo, une petite fille du Fatah récite un poème de Mahmoud Darwish. Je résisterai.
tu devrais parler d'abord du décor et de l'acteur dans ce décor, c'est-à-dire du théâtre. Ce théâtre-là, d'où il vient de 89, de la Révolution française, et du plaisir qu'avaient les conventionnels de 89 à faire des grands gestes et à déclamer en public leurs revendications. Cette petite fille, là, fait du théâtre pour la Révolution palestinienne, évidemment. Elle est innocente, mais peut-être cette forme de théâtre l'est moins.
On l'a fait comme pas mal.
What he's saying is that, you know, we put the same sound on all the revolutions, and when you do that, you stop seeing the revolution, which is a recurrent theme in Godard, which is see. Are you able to see what is around you, or are you completely numbed by the same song, the same concept? You know, it's like the Lebanese revolution. You can hammer on the table that this is a class struggle, and this is, you know, the insurrection of the workers against the bourgeoisie, and, you know, all of these things against the oligarchy, whatever you want. And as long as you're doing that, or as long as you do that, are you really seeing what is happening right here? And yes, it's Claire Parnet, I think, speaking. She has the same voice, but I'm not sure. You can check the you know, it's a similar voice. So, so what I'm saying is that you have this kind of matraquage of the same discourse over everything you do. And when you do that, you become insensitive to what is really going on. And ici ailleurs, really, Godard shows you how the Palestinian revolutionaries are unable to see how disjointed they are from you know, from what is going around them, because of this obsession with the historical discourse, historical songs, declamations, and all these images that they bring from here and there, that are literally repressing the lived resistance. And this is why at one point he shows you how resistant is. You see that it's neither declamation nor Marxist bombastic discourses. You see a bunch of mujahideen sitting in the forest, drinking tea, and talking about, you know, how can we pass to the other side, and how can we shoot the guard which is there, and how can we bring, you know, crisscross between the borders, and that's it. And what Godard shows you in parallel to that is the family in France, the mother doing tea for her daughter, and also trying to struggle with her life in France. And you start seeing that maybe there's something that passes between living your everyday life and resisting, really, like resisting in the army. And you start seeing that these two actions are quite, they communicate together, away from all this kind of hegemonic discourses, songs, and the like. So here I'll show you another one, which is a beautiful one if you want to really see the opposition between life and history. It's Comment ça va? In Comment ça va, the story, you have the man, I hope you will watch it, is the sensory motor historical man. He's a man who is at the head of a communist newspaper, and he wants to change history by awakening the masses, you know, the same story that you hear a little bit everywhere. And you have the woman, which is Godardian, which is a bit, you know, we don't know what she is. She's weird, and she's not, you don't really understand what she says in the beginning. And she keeps repeating in the movies that, look here, meaning you're not looking at what you're doing. You just think, and then you do something which has nothing to do with what you think. And actually, what you do is, in a way, in a stark opposition with what you say, because you are repressing yourself while talking about liberation and revolution. So at one point, you have this analysis of the typewriter. So here, she's analyzing for the guy, which is the sensory motor historical kind of guy, For the guy, you know, a typewriter is a modern machinery to spread the news and to awaken the people. And then you see what she tells him about the typewriter.
Avant, regardez mes mains de nouveau. En fait, quand on regarde bien, c'est un drôle de travail. Tu remarques rien de spécial.
Spécial par rapport à quoi?
Par rapport à quand tu relisais ton texte.
Oh.
Bon, vas-y encore une fois.
Écoute, c'est pas bientôt fini ou quoi?
Mais non, écoute, on cherche. Allez, vas-y encore une fois. Il faisait ça, ton regard.
Mon regard, il fait comme tes mains, si c'est ça que tu veux dire.
Non, justement pas. C'est mes mains qui font comme tes yeux. Et des mains, c'est pas fait pour voir. Donc, c'est un travail d'aveugle. En fait, quand on regarde bien, c'est un drôle de travail. Elles vont un peu dans toutes les directions, mes mains, mais dans un espace bien précis. Dans tous les sens, et comme si on avait un qui était le chef. Et le chef, là, c'est le sens d'une phrase. Oui, comme si j'étais aveugle et que j'avançais en tâtonnant dans un corridor tout droit. Et chaque fois que je me cogne, ça me remet sur le droit chemin. Et on me surveille.
L'image de ces soldats en uniforme, armés, déjà populaires, sifflant, international, entourés par 20 000 personnes, va peser lourd dans le processus.
Okay, I hope you understood the sequence where she's trying to show him that, you know, his revolutionary magazine, etc. It's really like when you relate to this work, you are under the domination of the idea, which is the meaning of the sentence. You do this with your hands and you follow with your eyes. And this is what needs to be seen. And you need to see that you are in this hierarchical dominant structure. And this is why there's a kind of contradiction between, you know, the performance of the job and what the job is supposed to say. So I'll show you another one with hands don't see. This is the analysis.
Je pensais que ces choses devaient t'intéresser. Surtout, toi, qui as toujours préféré le travail manuel. Moi, tu vois, je commence à voir que ce qui ne va pas aujourd'hui avec le travail manuel, c'est qu'il est d'abord du travail intellectuel. D'abord de l'écriture.
Ça va pas. Ça va pas du tout.
Comment ça va pas?
Oui, comment ça va pas? Comment ça va pas, ce bruit? Comment ça va pas, ces mains qui impriment?
Je comprends pas.
On dit au Portugal ça va, mais en France ça va pas. Ou alors au Portugal ça va pas, mais en France ça va. On dit ça va chez toi. Mais comment ça va chez moi ou au Portugal? Ça on dit jamais.
Je comprends pas.
Écoute, on peut parler de quoi dans ce petit film vidéo?
Je croyais que c'était clair. On voulait montrer comment on fabrique un journal.
Pas n'importe quel journal.
Bien sûr que non. On veut montrer comment on fabrique l'information, nous, les communistes.
Peut-être que pour montrer, il faudrait regarder un peu.
C'est ce qu'on fait.
Ah oui? Et là alors, qu'est-ce qu'on voit?
Une imprimante moderne, des programmatrices,
de la photocomposition, un traitement par ordinateur. Oui, une information moderne au service des hommes et des femmes qui luttent pour une démocratie avancée.
Moi, on repère le socialisme, rien du tout. Vous savez même pas ce que c'est qu'une machine à écrire.
Allez.
Non, on ne sait pas comment ça marche, on ne sait plus.
Okay, I hope you're getting this opposition between the historical character and the postmodern character, which is trying to show him that he's unable to see, you know, the sound is the virus. I hope you got that. It's a signal that tells you that you have to work, to go back and work. And you have this, you know, this kind of domination of the eye on the hands and the domination of the meaning on the eye, which is practically the historical structure. And I hope you're seeing how Godard does it, which I think, me personally, is really fascinating. It tells you, you see, if you are typing on a machine, your hands are bouncing in this limited space as if you are a blind man walking in a corridor. So you start seeing now, you start seeing that, you know, your hands are, you're like a blind man while you are using this machine because you have the similarities in the way of living. You're bouncing in a small place, you're bouncing in a small space also on the typewriter. And this is when you see that the ways of living is what connects these different situations, which are not supposed to be connected together. So here I'll show you another one on welding and writing, just for you to see how he connects the series. So at one point, Godard, he in 6x2, also a beautiful TV kind of program, Godard, he set up a situation where he asked people to come and sit for an interview for work. And of course, he told them that he will pay them for the interview because this is the work. They'll just need to answer his questions when they are at work. And I hope you'll be attentive to the art of the question. Because as Godard used to say, we shouldn't just ask questions to the workers, but we should also and mainly work on the questions. So if you want to do this kind of work, the whole artistic, creative work, or I don't know, the thing you have to do, the thing you have to work on, are the questions. Because only these questions can reveal what is unexpected, new, surprising, beneath the historical brainwash and the historical definition. So this is Godard doing his thing in 6x2.
Comment tu vas faire chez toi? Comment ça va se passer?
Je vais faire sur la table et je vais penser ce que j'écris.
Bah, prends un crayon et essaye de penser. Puis tu me dis... Est-ce que ça te rappelle pas quelque chose, ce crayon?
Si, à l'école, moi j'étais à l'école.
Non, mais quelque chose.
Quelque chose d'autre?
Quelque chose que tu viens de me dire tout à l'heure, il y a 5-10 minutes.
Je sais pas.
Ça te rappelle pas ta main,
Ah ouais, le chalumeau.
Le chalumeau, oui. Et tu as déjà pensé à l'écriture, au fait d'écrire un peu comme à ton métier? Je crois pas.
Non, je sais pas.
Là, par exemple, ben, tu as un chalumeau dans la main, qui est un stylo. Et puis, si tu devais en parler, si tu devais parler de quelque chose que tu écris, mais avec les termes de la soudure, alors on dirait, bon d'accord, là, il y a la main, il y a le chalumeau, et puis, où sont les deux autres pièces, et où est la baguette?
La baguette, elle se trouve dans la main.
Oui, mais là, qu'est-ce qui joue le rôle de la baguette quand tu écris? Écris le mot chômage, par exemple. Est-ce que tu trouves des signes, des lettres sur du papier.
Comment je peux lire?
Alors, où sont les deux pièces et où est la baguette?
La pièce, c'est le livre, le cahier.
Le cahier, ouais.
La baguette, c'est l'écriture.
C'est l'écriture.
Ouais.
Et alors, la deuxième pièce, elle est où si la baguette, c'est l'écriture?
C'est le livre.
Ah non, t'as dit que c'est la première pièce, le livre.
Ça, c'est le chalumeau. L'écriture, c'est la baguette. La deuxième pièce, je vois où se trouve.
Elle a disparu. C'est peut-être le contraire, peut-être le cahier, ouais, le livre, c'est une des pièces. Mettons la deuxième, et la première, c'est les lettres. Mais alors à ce moment-là, t'as les deux pièces, puis t'as le chalumeau. Et alors sous là, tu réécris chômage. Et là, alors il y a les deux pièces, mais la baguette, où est-ce qu'elle était?
Ben, c'est la baguette, c'est l'écriture.
Ouais, mais alors où est l'autre pièce?
Elle est posée sur l'autre, non?
Elle est
posée sur la première.
Ah ouais, elle est posée sur la première. Et c'est quoi qui est posé sur la première?
Première pièce.
Alors la première pièce, dans la deuxième pièce, c'est le cahier. La première pièce, c'est l'écriture. Et la baguette, elle est posée sur la première pièce. C'est-à-dire, elle se mélange avec l'écriture. C'est pour ça qu'on la voit pas, peut-être. Et là, t'as pas écrit n'importe quoi.
Le chômage.
Ben, le chômage, c'est important, hein, c'est pas... Donc, c'est pas... T'as pas écrit les lettres au hasard. Et comment t'appelles ça? Le fait que t'appelles ça quoi, le sens? Ça a un certain sens, là. Ça dit quelque chose que tu as écrit là.
Oui, bien sûr.
Ben, la baguette, c'est peut-être ça, c'est que les lettres, toutes seules, ça veut rien dire. Mets-les dans un autre sens, ces lettres. Écris-les pas dans cet ordre-là, par exemple. Et puis dis dans quel ordre tu les écris.
Je fais l'envers.
Comme tu veux, n'importe comment. Celle du milieu d'abord, comme ça, écris toutes les lettres. Puis dis les lettres que tu écris au fur et à mesure.
C-O-N-A. Non, C-O-N-A. G-H-E.
Ouais. Et ça fait quoi comme dis le mot?
Comag.
Comag. Ben, ça veut rien dire. Ben, c'est ça la baguette. Dans cet exemple-là, c'est dans la soudure, tu as... Là, on a travaillé, on a fait de l'écriture, le chalumeau. C'était quoi? Montre le chalumeau.
C'est le stylo.
Là, alors montre la deuxième pièce.
C'est l'écriture.
Oui, puis la première.
C'est le livre.
Oui. Puis la baguette.
C'est l'écriture, quoi.
C'est ce qu'il y a sur l'écriture.
Sur l'écriture.
Qui fait que l'écriture est dans un certain ordre. C'est l'ordre de l'écriture.
Okay, hope you got the idea. Here he's building two series, writing and welding, and you see how this allows us or him or together to reflect on the nature of writing, the nature of welding, the difference between intellectual and manual work, and how you still have this kind of weird intersections. Is actually the book the piece that allows you to weld two pieces together, or is it the sense? And you go into this kind of place where you start seeing things, where you start really like seeing in you what it means or what it could mean to write or to weld. So I hope you're getting this idea. So now if you watch the movie Le Mépris, which I hope also you will watch, all of these are incredibly good movies and beautiful movies. If you watch Le Mépris, you have two series. You have actually two series, which is interesting, is one of them reflects the other, which is the series of Ulysses. So you have Fritz Lang doing a movie on Ulysses. And in the movie, you have this couple, which is Piccoli and Bardot, which are having a fight, a couple kind of fight. And actually, I think it would be very interesting, at least how I read it or I see it, to be attentive to the fact that when you are with the couple, you stop seeing the scenery. It's really magical. Do the experience on your own. Watch the movie and be attentive to this. When the couple is, when they are fighting, Piccoli and his girlfriend, you stop seeing the sea and the pine trees and the whole beauty of the place where they are, les Carpates. And when you are with Fritz Lang, you see the sea. I think it's a very interesting commentary on history. You have on one side the guy which is part of the Communist Party, which is having a fight with his girlfriend because they want to buy an apartment. This is history. And on the other side, you have Fritz Lang, which is detached from history, which is doing a movie on the early Greeks before history, on Ulysses. And through the eyes of Ulysses, you're able to see the ocean, the sea again. I think it's a very nice reflection of these two things and the commentary on how, you know, history and its busyness makes you blind. So if you want, the first hence type of image that you have seen with these two series that you bring together is what you call seriality. And in seriality, you need to see something happening between things. Something happening between things. For example, I think a Lebanese artist, but this is how I read him. I don't know if you know Ali Sherri. I hope he's here. He's not here. So anyway, so Ali Sherri makes things that can work like that. So he brings together, I don't know if you see it here, animals and statues. You see, he brings together, in the museum, he puts stuff that comes from the Natural Museum and stuff which comes from the Ethnographical Museum, and he puts them together and you feel that there's something here that passes, that works. Anyway, this is a remark. You see this, and that, and you feel there's something that passes into that. I don't know yet exactly what, but I'm just giving you an example of this kind of composition of images where you feel that two series which are not that connected, there's something that passes between them. For example, this is the finger of a human being, and this is the finger of an ape, and you feel here something weird passing between these two images. So this is, if you want, seriality. And I think seriality is really a kind of, if I can call it that, like that, it's a kind of passion of the concept. Really, it's a kind of, you detach concepts from their meaning and you go into this kind of wondering, what is that? What is writing? What is welding? What does it mean to resist? And it's really like very, very refreshing because I think you can experience that when you listen to Godard speak, because you really feel that there's something, you know, like there's something that opens your mind on thinking differently, these notions that you are supposed to be familiar with. Now, the problematic, hence we've seen, it can touch on the pure sensation, optical sonorous, where you don't know anymore what the current sound are, and you can put them in circuit. It can touch the concepts themselves when you detach them from their meaning, and you do like Godard, you start reflecting on what it means to live, to resist, etc. You start putting these theories together to see if something happens in between these things. And I think a third way to go is the body. The body, or body cinema, or body art, concerns the body as a problematic point. I explained. And it relates to, of course, the repression of history. So if you take a movie maker like Doillon, Doillon made a movie called La Pirate with Jean Birkin. I hope you will see it. It looks like a normal movie at the beginning, but if you look carefully, you see that the problem that he's trying to show is how much the body is a zone of indeterminacy. We don't know what our bodies can do. This is from Spinoza, taken back by Deleuze, commenting on Doillon. We really don't know what the body is capable of. And the story of the movie La Pirate is about a woman who is, deeply in love with her fiancé, and she's beautiful, he's beautiful, and everything is supposed to go well. This is history. But each time she goes and she meets her best friend, which is another girl, they have sex together, and she doesn't understand what is going on. And here you see the disturbance of history. Of course, the guy goes crazy, and you have the whole movie unfolding on that. And the problem is that this woman, Jeanne Birkin, she cannot stop going back and forth between the man and the woman, between her friend, the girl, and her boyfriend, the man. And what Deleuze says about that is that the body has reasons that reason doesn't have. To paraphrase Pascal, the body has reasons that we don't understand. The women have a body, and you see the posture of lovemaking with the man, which are not the same as with the woman. And you start comparing how the body actually takes a different nature, flavor, pleasure in being with a woman or being with a man. And here you see that you have a zone of blurriness. You don't really know anymore if your body is, as we say historically, the body of a woman or the body of a man, because it seems that the body is something, we don't know what it is. It's a kind of, again, power that can combine very well with a similar body and with a dissimilar body, and actually doesn't really make a difference on that level, because what counts is the living combinations of the bodies, which is not even determined specifically by this, but maybe by a kind of disposition of the singular body itself, meaning this body fits that body of the woman, and this body fits also this specific body of the man. And this is when the bodies start creating problems, because your body seems to not abide by the rules of the historical divisions, which are the division of society and history, and your body seems to be, to go here and there because it enjoys taking these postures here and there. This is when you see the body really as a zone of indetermination. If you want another guy who really shows you the unfolding of the body is LeWitt. LeWitt, he really makes, in L'amour fou, for example, he shows you all the postures of the loving body, which I think is a very interesting thing. If you want to make a love story, a love movie, you can do it classically. Love story with Bogart, with, the beautiful woman, love story, bombastic, okay, it's great, but this would be a love story in the classical sense, which is you have a problem, they surpass the problem, etc. The love story à la LeWitt, he just shows you for 3 hours all the way in which people hug, they sit on the floor, they make love, they slap each other, and you see that there's a kind of parallel stories that you have in your head, which is the story of the body, which is beneath the story which is happening. It is, I think, a very interesting thing to remark. When you are with your husband, girlfriend, or whoever, boyfriend, there are 2 stories. There's a story of what you think, you know, I really love this person, it's great, it's working well. And then there's the story of the bodies. If you look, if you are attentive to the way you sit together, you touch each other, you communicate together, well, this is when you will see what kind of love you have, and if you are really in love, and if your bodies are really communicating together. This can only be seen. And I think what's interesting in LeWitt is that he shows you that. I can't describe it, you have to see the sequence. He shows you how they sit, they turn, they do all of these things. It's the story of the loving body. Now, Cassavetes, he takes it also like that in a different direction, because Cassavetes uses the bodies to secrete the story. For Cassavetes, postures are really like they absorb history. You know, if you want, again, to take our divisions, a Sunni guy from Beirut, you know, he doesn't stand and he's not aggressive in the same way as let's say, because it's on the carpet today, as a Shia guy from the south. They don't have the same postures when they are aggressive. And Cassavetes does it, you know, with the Greeks and the Americans and with the black people in New York. He shows you that the way a Greek is aggressive, the way he stands when he wants to fight, and is not the same as a black man is aggressive. And he shows you that actually you can tell the whole story of the movie just by showing body posture, and you understand what is going on just by showing these postures, which, as Deleuze says, they start to secrete the story. I like this notion. You just show postures, you know, you just show how, and to show the posture, you need to know the posture, you know, to go and film these postures. I hope someone will do this kind of work one day in Lebanon, like the postures of aggressivity, you know, in Lebanon. You already feel that there's something serial in that. And then when you put these postures together, well, this story starts to happen just by showing the postures. So this is, if you want, the political use of the body. And I think the ones that brought this use to a kind of paroxysm is Chantal Akerman in Jeanne Dielman. Jeanne Dielman is the story of a woman which is exploited, of course, by society and by history and by men, and you know everything you hear today on the news feed, and hence it's a feminist movie. But what is really nice in this feminist movie is that instead of just, you know, hammering on everyone that that women are exploited and stuff like that, she's able to find a plastic form to show you the exploitation of women in the body. I think this is really like remarkable. In Jeanne Dielman, I hope you'll watch this movie again. You see the woman working in the kitchen, and you see her repeating the same gestures over and over and over again in the movie. And this is when you feel the oppression. Really, you feel that washing the dishes, putting the towel where it should be, heating the food, bringing the food on the table, all of this cycle is so repressive because she's able to show you how the body is literally programmed by this kind of straitjacket, which is to nourish her son. And what's interesting in the movie is that the woman, besides taking care of her son, during the day she also prostitutes herself at her home. And at one point she cracks, meaning life cannot endure that anymore. And this is when she cracks and she stabs the man who was sleeping with her as a prostitute. This is the moment where life insurrects against history. I think really what is really interesting in Ackerman is that she shows you that in many of her movies, not just Chantal, not just Jeanne Dielman, she shows you that life is actually in our history taken by the polarity of the women. And I think this is when her political stance becomes really interesting, because what she's saying, Chantal Akerman, is that life in our history was the lot, was the le lot, was the part of the woman. Because as you know, men, they are in the outside, they have a political life, they have a social life, they work, they bring money, They do all these things which are historical, socio-political, and women wait at home in our history. Yeah, it's not true for all histories, but in our history, which is the recent history of the West and the colonized West, this is how things go. And what Chantal Ayerman shows that, and I hope you will notice that in the movies, you see that men, they speak. And you see in the face of that speech, the postures of the women. The women are, standing there, listening, changing their body postures, and they are the polarity of life, facing this kind of never-ending speech of history. And you feel this contrast, you see the contrast between a man which is completely taken into his historical delirium, and the woman sitting there and in a way, or to some extent, suffering or resisting this kind of absence of contact, of seeing, of being here, which the man incarnates. So I think that what's really interesting in Ackerman is to see that the feminine or womanhood is the polarity of life, and I think in that direction you can, feminize any man or masculinize any woman. What counts is this polarity, history, life, rather than the sex of the woman or the sex of the man. So another take on that, and still in this kind of tension between history and life, is people like Jean Rouch, people like Caramelo Bene or Morrisey. I don't know if you know these artists and movie maker. For example, Morrisey, which was a friend of Andy Warhol. You have the cinema of the transvestites. So what does it mean when you transvestite? When you start dressing for the carnival or for the party, and here you really see in the movies of Morrisey people who are from the working class, from very, very harsh conditions of work. They work in, really painful works. They go back home, and it's the weekend, and this is when they start to dress for the weekend, for the night. And Morrisey was part of this generation in New York, where among them you had, Warhol and later Madonna and, all these stars that used to transvestite and make these parties. So what happens in these forms of life? What happens is what we call the gestus. Now, what is a gestus? A gestus is simply a concentration of who you could be if you are not repressed by history. To make it very simple, it's like that. Is that we are so repressed by history, we have to sit in a very steady way. When you are a professor, you have to hold yourself, you have to speak in a certain way, you have to have gestures which are those of the professor, and all of that is part of your social historical role. And yet, sometimes something escapes. Sometimes you look like a dog, or you behave like a cat, or you are an Apache, or you are an Arab from the Sahara. And this is when something ahistorical is going to really perforate the historical envelope or format in which you are. Because, history demands from the body to do that. You see, the body doesn't only absorb history, like we have seen in Ackerman, Cassavetes, and LeWitt. Also, the body is formatted by that, which represses all the other potentialities of the body. And this is when I think the movies of Bene, Caramelo Bene, and Morrisey are really interesting. You see that actually we as bodies, or the body, like in Caramelo Bene, has a very powerful ceremonial dimension, which really needs to be exploited. So I was saying to say that the gestus is that. So if your hand makes rounded gestures, or if your voice sometimes is too, too much like that of a bird, or if your hair goes into a direction like a cat, or if you snore like a dog and stuff like that, all of these traits are usually dispersed in our everyday life. So it escapes. The transvestite is going to concentrate all of these little escape shaping gestures into one persona, which are going to be the transvestite. And this is when you will become really who you are, really who you are, meaning the person body who is beneath the social. And this is when on the weekend, or if you can every day, if you can, you will become yourself, meaning you will be, the drag queen, or I don't know, Madonna, which how she used to do her thing, or these other artists who used to transvestite themselves like that. So Jean Rouch actually he did it with when he was in Africa with people, I think Africans, and you really see this kind of repression of history and how they're able to go beyond this repression. And he shows you that in the before after. So I'll show you the sequence very quickly. So if you take Jean Rouch, this is from Les Maîtres Fous. Now, Les Maîtres Fous is a kind of documentary, I don't know if you can call it like that, where you really see young people on the weekends, they go into a trance. And in this trance, they become this other character, this other body. And this other body is going to mock what they are during their everyday life, meaning during the days in which they serve capital, they serve the colonial powers, and they have to behave properly. On the weekends, they become these trance figures. They are transfigured and they go in trance, and they become these other characters. So you will see here the before and the after, meaning the transformation into a trance figure and the usual, how they are usually.
Cas arrivent l'un après l'autre. Voilà commandant Mougou, qui reprend avec Moukaïla peut-être l'un des dialogues de la veille. Mais aujourd'hui, le commandant Mougou n'est plus impuissant et sa bonne amie est toute contente. À côté se réunit une nouvelle conférence de la table ronde. Mais cette fois-ci, il ne s'agit plus de savoir si on mangera un chien cru ou cuit, mais simplement de jouer aux cartes. Madame Locotoro, la femme du docteur, nous l'avons rencontrée chez Punjabi. Madame Locotoro est magasinier. C'est un garçon peut-être un peu efféminé qui use beaucoup de vaseline pour cheveux, mais c'est un excellent vendeur. Le caporal de garde possède 3 camions. Il a le monopole de la vente des gravillons aux travaux publics d'Accra. Le lieutenant d'ordonnance est voleur à la tire. Il guette ses clients sous les arcades de la CFAO. Le général, dans le civil, est simple soldat. Et par un hasard extraordinaire, c'est devant le Mental Hospital, devant l'hôpital psychiatrique d'Accra, que nous trouverons l'état-major. Le gouverneur, le conducteur de locomotive, le conducteur de camion. Ils sont employés aux waterworks, aux travaux d'adduction d'eau de la ville. Ceux qui étaient punis comme Gerba se sont rasés les cheveux. Ils ne sont plus impurs. Et en voyant ces visages souriants, en apprenant que ces hommes sont peut-être les meilleurs ouvriers de l'équipe des waterworks, en comparant ces visages avec ces visages horribles de la veille, on ne peut s'empêcher de se demander si ces hommes d'Afrique ne connaissent pas certains remèdes qui leur permettent de ne pas être des anormaux, mais d'être parfaitement intégrés à leur milieu. Des remèdes que nous ne connaissons pas encore.
Okay, I hope you got the idea. So here you see really the before and after. It's not here the transvestite, but to go in trance. In Morrisey, you see more the transvestite, meaning you dress and you decorate yourself. And this really brings you to your genuine, in quote, self, meaning yourself before the history and before your formatting by history. So I would, this would be the last one, conclude with Pasolini because you see, we've said that Godard really opens on a kind of passion of the concept, because the concept becomes something new, something unexpected. It's a kind of delirium of thought. I don't know how to call it. It's really related to problematizing thinking. And I think Godard is a great thinker in that sense. He's absolutely unexpected, marvelous, and he really puts you in awe when he starts to question and to think. Now, the other pole of thought, which is also problematic, is thought as a dark power that always pushes you to search. And I think this is what Pasolini brings out in his movie Theorema. Again, an incredible, beautiful movie that I hope you will watch. And the theorematic in Pasolini is actually, he shows you that, I hope you know the story, so I'll restitute the story very quickly. The story is a very bourgeois family in Milan, and the man, the husband, the father owns a factory, a car factory. His wife is beautiful, he has beautiful kids which are smart and loving, and the maids that they treat very well. So everything looks fine in this family, and they are nice people, you know, loving, funny, and not constipated and stuff like that. So they are nice people. So this is, if you want, history. History is this family with its social division, social roles, etc. And this family receives a visitor, which is a beautiful man that only reads Arthur Rimbaud, which is very mysterious. He doesn't speak. And this very handsome man is going to sleep with all the members of the family. So he's going to sleep with the maid, then with the son, then with the daughter, and then the mother, and last the father, if I remember the order correct. Now, after he sleeps with them, he leaves because he was a visitor. And this is when the members of this family start to go a bit crazy. The son becomes a scatological artist. He makes arts by urinating and with his excrement. The daughter becomes completely catatonic. She doesn't move anymore. The woman, the mother, becomes an erotoman, a kind of nymphomaniac who sleeps with all the young men that she sees. The husband, father, he gives his factory to the workers, and he starts to walk naked in train stations, screaming like an animal. And last, the maid becomes a saint, and you see her floating in the air and only eating, boiled vegetables and stuff like that. So you see that there's a disturbance. So what Pasolini is putting here in the plot, what he's putting is the encounter with thought. But you see now, thought is a power to disturb. Thought is what doesn't let you comfortably sleep at night. Thought is something that doesn't let you just endorse your social role, your social historical role, and always pushes you to go beyond. And actually, what's interesting in the Theorema is that the movie itself is is problematic, because we don't really understand what is the nature of this encounter. And then the theorem consists in dividing the cases. What happens with case 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which are each character encounters thought in a specific way. And then you see the cases of thought. So when you watch this movie, you have to see that the movie itself is organized like a problem and the cases related to this problem. Now, another movie by Pasolini is Salo, where instead of having a problematic thing, we don't know what is thought, is you see the power of deduction of thought. This is, say, the Sado-fascism for at least Pasolini, even if I think that Sade shouldn't be mixed up with that. This is what Foucault also thinks, but anyway. So Pasolini makes this kind of amalgam between sadism and, because Salo, is a title by Sade, and fascism, where you see how the deductive thought can become can go absolutely out of track and become absolutely crazy. which is the other form of the power of. So if you want, we have seen today two powers. We have seen the power of thought as a power to push, that pushes you to always search. This would be Pasolini. As a power to problematize, this would be Godard, meaning you don't know anymore what is writing, welding. You have all these questions, and this is, I think, the power of reflection of Godard. Really, you see that reflection becomes a power because it can dismantle everything we know and that we've inherited from history. And on the other hand, you have the power of the body. And the power of the body is declined into different forms. You have seen the political body, like in Ackermann, Cassavetes, and Rivet, where the body can really absorb history, and you can see oppression and all of these things through what the body had absorbed. You have the ceremonial body, like in Bene and Morrisey, where the gestus is a concentration of who you are before the repression of history. And you have other variations like the theatrical body of Jean Rouch, which is trans rather than transvestite. And I didn't speak about him, unfortunately, in detail, but you have Garel, where you have a physical body. Please watch Garel, Philippe Garel, which is an incredible movie maker, which is not very well known, where you see really he's able to make you see the body again. In all his movies, I think what is really remarkable is that you're able to watch and see the body again. And we have seen variations on serial art. Huh? What?
Est-ce que son fils a is his son called Louis Garel, the actor?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
His son is Louis Garel. But I think, with all due respect to everyone, I think Philippe Garel is just an incredible movie maker. So watch not the movies of Philippe Garel, not Louis Garel. And so if you want, this is what we did today. I hope this is clear. And I hope you saw that nature itself can function in this kind of in a seriality way. This is why I tried to show you with the wasp and the orchid, with the fingers of the man and the ape. Nature itself has this kind of power of seriality, and I'm sure you can find it also in many works of art. Now that you know a little bit how it works, we have seen Ali Sherry, but I'm sure today you have many artists and installation art, especially, where they put things together that they seem not to fit together and something happened in between. I hope now you will be able to think that in this direction. Do you have questions on that? Or you're fine?
No, we're good.
Are you gonna post the recording of our session now?
Yeah, now. I'll just download it and post it. And I remind you, if the recording is a bit, the sound on these recordings is not very good, and the conditions, I think, are not very good. I think it's the last time I've done a lecture on these platforms. You can listen to the recorded sessions. I think they are better because they have a normal voice and you have a class. So it's a bit, and it's more detailed, so you can listen to the audios which are in the folder audios, and where you will have much, it's more fluid, and I think it's better. If you really want to dive into one of these images, listen to the audios, now that you've got an idea of what is meant.
But just for the movie clips as you're talking, just for that.
Yeah, for the movie clips, sure. But I advise you to also listen to the audios. Okay, so that would be it for today. If you have questions for your copy, stuff like that, I advise you can rewrite one of your exams if you want to get higher grades, and you have to stick to the content. Please, for the love of God, do not interpret images by saying this means that. Okay, all what you do, at least with me, because I feel that, you know, I talk for 20 hours for nothing. What I'm trying to do in this course is tell you that images are not about something. Meaning you can't tell me, well, you know what, this author deals with death and he's representing love, and the horse in his painting is actually his father, and the cup in the painting is his mother. Please don't do that. All I'm trying to explain to you is that there are living forms which are images, it's the same, and try to see images like that. You see, when we say that you have series because you have a problematic concept, as how you build a series, and then you can have something passing between the series. This is not anymore a language where I say, you know what, the flower means peace. So try to, in this course, remove from your language, when you read images, remove the word, this symbolizes that, okay? So try to do your essay without referring to this symbolizes that, and you'll see how much more interesting it will become, because this symbol is one type of image, it's in the mental image, and that's all. And hence, you can't just say this symbolizes that, you know, all over the place, because you're mixing the theme and the form. And actually, the whole beauty of images is that they're not about themes. War, who cares that this movie is about war? What you care about is to know how is he dealing with war. And you see that now the theme is almost an irrelevant component of the structure of the image. So don't do that. Don't do this means that, because I get very, you know, I think it's very sad and it's very repressive. It's as if there's something, I think, there which is not being felt. And the second one, don't rely on the viewer. Another advice, don't tell me that this author is trying to make the viewer feel this, or the viewer feels that. This is what the work is about. Because this whole theory is a theory from the point of view of the producer and not the viewer. So what the viewer feels, we don't care. And don't make confusions like, you know, the author is trying to manipulate the mental state of the viewer. This is why it's a mental image. This becomes a total disaster. Like, okay, so practically you're not being able to grasp the structure of a mental image. For you, it's simply if I affect your mental, meaning if the artist affects the mental of the viewer, it becomes a mental image. And if he affects his emotion, it becomes an emotional image, which is for me literally a disaster. I will say it as it is. For me, it's total blindness when it comes to what is really going on, what is really happening in the image. And I advise you to avoid these tracks, which are usually the tracks that we use to talk about images. So that's for the remarks on your exams. So when you will have the next exam, you have an image type, you choose your author, it fits in one image type, so study in depth one image type, at least to know how it works, and write clearly what you know about this image type by showing me that you are able to get it. And I'm here if you don't get it. I'm here if you don't get it, if you want to ask questions, and you know, either because you want to get it or because you want to improve your grades. For me, it's the same. So that's it for today. Okay, so see you soon. And yeah, what's your question, Moore?
Regarding Un Nouveau Roman d'Europe Créée, do you know any place where it could be accessible, or any site where I could download it maybe?
All the books are accessible on LibGen. I've already sent you the sites on your email when I told you if you're not finding books where you can find it, and I'll put it on the OneDrive. I'll put it now, and if I don't put it, remind me, I'll put it. Rob Grillet's book is a canonical book written by an artist where you see what it means to be an artist and how aware an artist is. Really, it's like a canonical book for me. It's like the ideal book. Paul Klee wrote books also, but this one is really like a school case, like you know, like the best book if you want to know how an artist thinks, because he shows you how precise and aware he is. He shows you that he knows what is at stake historically, philosophically, in his context, and he knows how is this reflected into the medium and how he will innovate in relation to that, and who is with him and who is against him, and then he does it. This is what really amazing, and then he does it, and he does it in the ground that he's known for. So this is really, I'll put the book. I hope you read it to see, to demystify and to really like also debunk this myth of the stupid artist who doesn't know what he's doing. If he's not stupid, it's even worse because he looks like a priest or like an inspired Madonna or like an inspired Pythie, to use the Greek stuff. You know, it's as if he goes in a kind of state of inspiration and he starts to create. I don't think that it works like that at all. And I hope you read it in Rob Grillet to see how it works, and you will see where the focal point of creation, in quote, occurs. So I will put it for that. Thank you for mentioning this. This way I can rant about that too.
Thank you.
Do you have other suggestions or questions?
No, it's all fine.
Okay, so we'll call it a day. Thank you for coming, and see you next Wednesday.
See you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.